What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Bryant, and we've got a great episode in store for you all today. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to talk about the New England Patriots' latest victory over the New York Jets, moving them ever closer to an AFC East division title and a potential spot at the number one seed in the AFC. We'll also talk about the Bryant Bulldogs' recent win over Worcester State this past Sunday and how they look going into conference play. It's going to be a great episode, so I'm excited to talk about all of that with you. And joining us on today's episode is none other than Bryant superfan Tyler Jarvis. Tyler, glad to have you on the program with us. How you doing, man?
Good to be here, Brian. Longtime fan, first-time caller, as they say. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad to have you on the program. You know, we had a chance to meet each other at the home opener for this past season. We were crossing paths, and you had mentioned that you were a follower of my other show, the Bryant Bulldog Sports Hour, and would love to talk some Bryant stuff, here and there, and glad to have you on for that. You also mentioned you're a big Pats fan, so I'm glad to talk about all of that stuff with you. So really excited to get into all that. But before we get into it, we just want to say that if you're not following Down to the Wire yet, make sure you follow us on our social media platforms. Our Instagram is at down.tothewire. Our X, formerly Twitter, is at down_to-the-wire. And you can also follow us on all streaming platforms. So make sure you go drop us a follow there if you are not already. But Tyler, we'll start off today first. You know, the New England Patriots had a old school kind of throwback thumping of the New York Jets, winning 42-10, improving to 13-3 on the year. Drake Maye, an unbelievable day from him, 19-21, passing 256 yards, 5 touchdowns. Just give me your opening thoughts from, this absolute, offensive juggernaut of a win today.
Well, Brian, I think the strength of schedule talks have kind of started to go down a little bit. Today, you had Drake Maye throwing to Stephon Diggs, Pop Douglas, and the Power of Friendship wide receiver group. I mean, you had Afton Chisholm, undrafted free agent, making some big catches for us today. You had Stevenson making some big plays today. You saw that touchdown catch that he had with a defensive lineman covering him. It was honestly just offense was firing on all cylinders. Down Mac Hollins, down Wilson, down Will Campbell. You had so many guys down and out that have been big time players for us this year. The New England Patriots offense is legitimate. The Josh McDaniels work that he's been doing with Drake Maye has been absolutely amazing. And you kind of saw a little bit of that hard-nosed Mike Vrabel coaching today, especially once it got closer to half, calling that timeout after the roughing the passer on Drake Maye, going down there, getting a score. And it's always good to beat the Jets.
Oh, yeah. It's a classic old-fashioned, ass-whooping there over in New York. It was great to see them get the job done there. And like you said, Afton Chisholm has his first career touchdown grab in a New England Patriots uniform. He was getting all sorts of attention throughout the preseason. They finally had a chance to show him off there, like you said, because Mac Hollins is now on IR. Kayshon Boutte also didn't play in this game. So it was a lot of Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, and Chisholm. So those were the three guys you really saw on that end. But Drake Maye today had 5 touchdowns. All 5 of them were to different receivers. You had Diggs, Stevenson, Henry, Chisholm, and then Austin Hooper. So, the great thing about Drake Maye is that it's not like he is like a merchant of like having just, one receiver or one player that he's going to constantly. It's not like he has like a Justin Jefferson where it's like, oh, he's just going to feed that guy constantly. He's spreading the pill around. He's making it work. And it was great to see today. I saw this stat from NFL Plus. It said that he's the first player in NFL history to complete 90% of his passes while throwing for at least 250 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is unbelievable. And I think that, that's an MVP stat at that. He's been unbelievable this year. And, while this game against the Jets maybe isn't the litmus test for something like that, it does show where this team is, from a year ago. And they were talking about it all day long during the Fox broadcast. You were a 4-13 team win last year. Things kind of seemed hopeless under the Gerard Mayo era. And they proceeded to go into the offseason completely nuke their plan that they had by bringing in Mike Vrabel and restarting that thing. And, I got to give Drake Maye credit. When he came in, I had some concerns about him thinking that maybe he was going to be a little bit too cowboy and was going to, maybe have too many kind of trick plays. I knew the talent was there. I knew he could complete passes to all 3 levels of the field, but I didn't know if he was going to maybe get skittish when the pocket starts breaking down and is going to try to do too much. Maybe he isn't going to have the wherewithal to know when to take a sack, but he has learned to do that. I'm glad to see that he's been able to adapt to the NFL game as it's gone on. And I think the impressive thing with him, Tyler, is that it happens every single week that he seems to have improvement. There might be something, a slight setback or something like that, but you do see that improvement happen every single week.
Yeah, well, I would credit that one to Drake Maye. I know a lot of concerns about him coming out of college were his footwork, as you kind of mentioned there in the pocket. And even in that first 4-13 season, I didn't really see that as a huge concern for Drake. I saw the talent. I saw the vision. I knew that he was a legitimate quarterback. But it is, like you said, bringing in a top-tier head coach. A lot of people forget Mike Vrabel brought the Tennessee Titans, led by Ryan Tannehill, to a very close AFC Championship game with the Kansas City Chiefs. But listen, everyone in this league loves to talk about the offense, and the offense is the big thing, and I get that. But another thing we got to look at, Brian, is the Patriots' defense. Listen, this year, one of my biggest concerns with the Patriots defense was getting to the quarterback. You know, we got a lot of guys injured up there on front. Guy we got from the Eagles, he's out for the year. We haven't really been able to get the pressure on the quarterback. Obviously, you got Marcus Jones, you got Christian Gonzalez lining up against the receivers. You got a strong secondary. But with Spillane out, with Tonga out, with a lot of different people mixing and matching, kind of like the offense was in this game. Jets to only a couple scores in this game. I think that's a really important thing. You got to not only give credit to the defense, the guys that were there making those plays. I mean, Brendan Schooler was playing safety, which is just crazy. But also the coaching and the preparation and being able to get ready and not playing down to your opponent's level. This could have easily been a game that we've had before. We've seen these Patriots before where they play a team they're supposed to beat and they play down to their level. Last year's Patriots would have done that. The Patriots of the year before that would have done that. But we didn't. We didn't play down to them. We went into the Meadowlands. We beat them on defense. We beat them on offense. Everyone looked prepared. Everyone looked ready to play. And every single starter was out by the mid-third quarter.
Yeah, and it was a perfect game in terms of that too. And someone I think that has been excellent all season long has been Caleb Von Chasom. He's a new favorite of mine. I think that he was a great find for them this offseason, and he's been absolutely incredible. And like you said, having guys fill in with Milton Williams' absence, it's been imperative that those type of guys step up, and it's been really awesome to see what they can do. But yeah, I mean, the defense has had its moments, and even though Christian Gonzalez was a Pro Bowler this year, you can argue that he isn't having maybe nearly as a productive a season as you would like to think he is, because the Patriots, scheme wise, have been doing a lot more zone on defense. Gonzalez is more of a man-to-man, thrives more in a man-to-man setting. So the fact that he's getting this Pro Bowl recognition is incredibly impressive. So, the secondary is doing well, and Marcus Jones, getting that, contract extension earlier this year proves that he's doing his job. It is a really exciting unit. I guess the only unit where maybe there has been some struggles this year and maybe, you'd like to see some improvement would be on the special teams. We've seen it hurt them in the return game against that Buffalo game. You had some key critical returns hurt you in this Jets game. I won't fault them for those two fake punts that the Jets were doing. In my opinion, what the hell were they doing? I mean, the first play, I get it. You're down 35-3. You're trying to start something, and it actually works out on your end. Good for you. Why are you running a second fake punt there? Why are you doing that?
Same drive, Brian.
Yeah.
Why are you running a fake punt on the same drive you get to fourth down again after that fake punt? Why are you doing it again? I think they were trying to catch the Patriots off, thinking that maybe they're not as good of a coach team as they are. But Mike Vrabel is a phenomenal coach. All of these guys have such great discipline, and they're not letting that fly two times in a row.
No, I mean, the first time it's kind of just like, okay, yeah, you know what, you're down 35-3. Let them have that. Like, they can go nuts with that. But the second time, the fact that you're pulling that off twice in the same drive and it doesn't work out like that, I mean, I would fire the special teams coordinator on the spot. That's a fireable offense to me, that you're running your two fakes on one drive. Like, I could see it in one game. That's fine to me. On the same drive, it just like that should be like that should be the the bell going off that, hey, things aren't going well for us this drive because we had to send out our punter 2 times. Like that should be the clock going off in your head saying, hey, let's shut this thing down. So that's unbelievable to me.
Well, as the saying goes, Brian, the Jets are the Jets are the Jets. They haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. I almost, and I don't, but I almost feel bad for the New York Jets, the fan base at least, because they've had to go through such punishment over these years. I mean, it's been terrible. But the New York Jets, back in my dad's day, always talked about how the Jets would beat up on the Patriots. And now it's just payback tenfold. Every year, I love beating the Jets. I love beating the Dolphins. I love beating the Bills at home, away. It doesn't matter. And there's just something special about beating the Jets every year. A clean sweep this year, the New York Jets, and it's amazing.
Yeah, this clean sweep obviously sets them up in good position for a chance at the AFC East title. I know that at the time of this recording, that's still up in the air with the Bills battling it out against the Eagles right now. I know that is still going on. But before we talk about that and the overall AFC playoff picture, just, kind of going back to Drake Maye and this in general, there's been, the MVP chance where we were hearing him in Baltimore. We were hearing him today in the Meadowlands. And a lot of people are saying that, this is a crowning moment for Drake Maye. He should be the MVP of the league. I know he's in conversation with Matthew Stafford. And then when you look at just the stats as to how great this season has been, he's just the third Patriots quarterback in franchise history to throw for 4,000 yards, matching up with Drew Bledsoe and Tom Brady. And he also has 30 touchdown passes this year. I mean, just another incredible game for him. In your mind, is he the runaway favorite?
In my mind, he's the runaway favorite. You mentioned the MVP chance in Baltimore in the Meadowlands. We also had him in Smithfield here when he came to visit, which was absolutely amazing to see him and listen to him. And that was great. In my mind, if I'm a voter, he's the NFL MVP hands down. But I kind of heard a very interesting point where it's if he doesn't get it, which I think that the NFL voters and the writers aren't going to give it to him, how much does that fire up this New England Patriots team? How much do they go to the playoffs with kind of the chip on their shoulder of the easy schedule, the chip of their shoulder of their guy, Drake Maye, who's balled out this year, not getting the MVP, and go into what could be, at the time of this recording, a weaker AFC playoff and just go out there and dominate and show them that, hey, we are this team. We are well coached. We're very talented. We're dedicated, we're hardworking, and we're going to go in there and we're going to bust you up.
Yeah, I think that, I think you make a good point at that. I know obviously the MVP odds wouldn't come out until the NFL honors around the Super Bowl and that kind of stuff. But I think that, the odds makers and that kind of stuff would already have that kind of outlined by then. You'd have a clear idea as to who was going to be in the running for that. And I think that, maybe around the league, people see Stafford and he's the more established veteran. He's, towards the end of his career, they might try to put him over I think that they might say, we're going to try to put Stafford over the hump with this and give him this honor. I mean, frankly, for me, I would give it to Drake Maye just because when you think of, it's not just the best player in the league, there is a value aspect to it. And I think that, this was an issue that came with, people talking about when, to, kind of cross sports and talk about Major League Baseball. People used to be like, oh, Mookie Betts shouldn't be the MVP. It should be Mike Trout. But Mike Trout was on a team that was maybe not making the playoffs or doing as well. And it's not necessarily the case with the Rams, but I'll say this with the Rams, like, we know what Matthew Stafford is. He's a known commodity, and yeah, they had struggled, but he's also won a Super Bowl with that team. We know that he can be good and can contribute to that team. Drake Maye, if you take him off the Patriots, I don't know if this team, I don't know what this team looks like without Drake Maye. I would be very nervous to see what this team would look like with, even average quarterback play, because Drake Maye has been playing out of his mind, and that is the reason that this team is in the position they are. Because the thing I'll say to you too, Tyler, is that, when we came into this season, it was about maybe reestablishing expectations for the Patriots. They're 3-13 this year. You could make the case that even if they had, 5 more losses than if they had 5 more losses on their current record, you could consider this season probably a success from where they're coming from. It's the fact that they've reestablished themselves as a juggernaut in the league and have and gone on that way that I think really, sets it into tone for me. Because, if Drake Maye was having a good year and the Patriots were, say 9-7 right now and in the playoff hunt and a wild card threatening team, but the Bills are still, are still kind of the clear favorite. I would say, it's a good sign that things are, trending up in Foxborough, but, he's not your MVP. But it's the fact that you've been as dominant as you are that, people are now saying that they would take you in the division race over Buffalo. That sets it for me. The fact that, they're taking you over maybe guys like Josh Allen, which is unbelievable to think of. So I think that's, the clear and given takeaway for me with that. But, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the AFC playoff picture looks as we get into, as we go into week 18. I know it's going to be some playoff potential matchups as we go into that one, some division titles on the line, namely with Baltimore and Pittsburgh facing off against one another, which is going to be interesting because we just had an absolute upset go down in Cleveland with Shedeur Sanders outdueling Aaron Rodgers to get to set up a potential play-in game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh for week 18. So I know we're talking some Patriots here, but just give me your thoughts with that one, with the fact that Shedeur Sanders upsets the Steelers and sets up this nightmare scenario for Pittsburgh in week 18.
So I want to go back to what you talked about first with the value, and I 100% agree with what you were saying there. I want to look at the Los Angeles Rams offensive depth chart here.
Yeah.
Kyren Williams, one of the best running backs in the league. Blake Corum, a phenomenal backup running back. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, two absolute elite wide receivers behind an amazing offensive line, and Matthew Stafford's balling. Well-deserved. But Drake Maye, with half of his O-line injured, with his top target in the game before this one, Matt Collins, being on IR until at least the AFC Championship game with his abdomen, without Kayshon Boutte, who's been amazing for us this year, is still balling out.
Yeah.
And it goes to your testament about how great he's been playing. He'll come in, week out. They talked about in the broadcast him not showing that much emotion because he's cool, calm, and collective, and he's just doing what needs to be done, and he's doing it at such a high level. Whereas the AFC playoff picture, Brian, I really don't want the Ravens to be in the playoffs.
No.
I think the Ravens are a team, I know we beat them. They're a team that poses one of the biggest threats to the Patriots. We played against Tyler Snoop Huntley when he went and Lamar Jackson was out. A lot of people were talking about the strength of schedule again. I get that. A lot of people were talking about Derrick Henry being benched. I think that's a dangerous team for us to face in an AFC Championship game, to face in an AFC divisional round, right? And I think Buffalo, to your point too, may be getting in, may not be getting in, right? That's another very dangerous game for us. I get it. We won against them this year. But these are two dangerous teams that I would like to see not in the AFC playoff picture as much as we possibly can. If we have to go against the Texans, the Jags, the Chargers, the Steelers, I'd be very confident in placing a bet that the New England Patriots make it to the AFC Championship game, if not the Super Bowl, right? But if a Bills or Ravens sneak in there, these contenders that we've seen in the past couple years, I'd be nervous when it would come to a divisional matchup. I'd be nervous when it would come to an AFC Championship game. Even if we do have that bye and Matt Collins comes back and everyone gets healthy, which we're assuming we will, but it's dangerous, right? If those teams that this playoff picture shakes out and the Ravens aren't in and the Bills aren't in, I think Patriots fans should rejoice. I think we should. I'm not even that scared of the Broncos, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people are high on the Denver Broncos. A lot of people are high on the Bo Nix and the Sean Payton offense and all that great stuff. But to me, Bo Nix hasn't played necessarily exceptional. A lot of it has been fourth quarter comebacks where PS2 Pat Surtain, who honestly we talk about now, you could be a real MVP because he's playing out of his mind this year, their defense has kept them in it, and then the fourth quarter, Bo Nix will lead the offense down and it'll make a comeback. I don't think that happens against the New England Patriots. I don't think that happens against the secondary. I don't think that happens against his defense, and I think that Josh McDaniels' offense, especially with a bye or going into an AFC Championship game, would be very ready for what the Broncos have on defense.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I do agree with your take of not wanting Baltimore in there because let's face it, Tyler, this league it's about the quarterbacks. And if right now Lamar Jackson is hurt, so we don't know the status of him with that back injury. My best guess is when it would in the next couple of weeks come playoff time, if the Ravens were to advance to the playoffs, I feel like Lamar Jackson would be back. And even if it's in Foxborough, we've seen how the Ravens, it's a John Harbaugh led team. If they're going into Foxborough, they always have some sort of an answer for what the Patriots are going to throw at them. I don't think the Patriots are going to go out and win that game, convincingly, and you're going to be able to take out Drake May in the third quarter like you did today against the Jets. It's not going to be that kind of a game. It's going to come, it's going to basically go right down to the wire, and it's going to be incredibly close in that one. So, like you said, with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen's of the world, like those guys are the people that you have to fear come playoff time. I know Patrick Mahomes isn't in it this year, but he's another one. If the Chiefs had snuck in, even if they weren't having as good a year, that would have been a guy you would have had to look at. You mentioned the Broncos, and I will say this on paper, if they were playing on a neutral site, if they were just playing wherever, I would probably tell you I favor the Patriots too. However, if it came down to us playing an AFC championship game at Mile High, I would be terrified because on 3 occasions with Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, we went in there in the playoffs and we did not win. I've seen people say that place is basically a haunted house. It never goes well for the Patriots there because, even in 2015, you have a Patriots team coming off a Super Bowl victory and, Super Bowl 49 and people are feeling really good about this team. But you go in there, you face that legendary Broncos defense, and you get shredded in that one. And it was against Peyton Manning, who basically had a noodle arm at that point in his career. And even 2 years prior, when you went in there and you faced off against Manning, that was MVP Manning, and they diced you up, and you really had no offensive weapons in that one. And then, to even go back to 06, that was like the Ben Watson tackling Tracy Porter out of the end zone. It was that game. So it's always something about it, and maybe it's the altitude because you have to have all the guys on oxygen, and it's kind of there's that kind of an obstacle with it. But there's always been a home field advantage for Denver in that, and frankly, I would love to see the Patriots lock up the number 1 seed, take that completely out of the picture, because if we can just avoid Mile High, I think the Patriots could have a really good shot at making it to the Super Bowl. Which going into the season, I would not have thought that was the case, but. But if you can take out Mile High out of the picture, then I think there is absolutely a clear path to Santa Clara this year.
First off, I definitely agree with you with saying that nobody expected this out of the Patriots this year. I had their ceiling at 8 wins, 9 wins, around there. Essentially right now, Brian, we're playing with house money, right? Yeah. We've far and away surpassed everyone's expectations for the New England Patriots this year, bar none. But I will say this about Mile High. Bo Nix is not an experienced veteran MVP quarterback like Peyton Manning was.
He's not, but Peyton Manning at the end, dude, had no arm. It was non-existent, and there's always just been answers. And like I said, that Broncos defense, man, it's back. But yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you there, but I will say the Broncos defense is back, but I could see Bo Nix getting nervous in that situation too. I could see it. A lot of people love to talk about how young this New England Patriots team is, about being their biggest weakness, and all these talking heads on ESPN, they're saying that come playoff time, this Patriots team is going to fold when the pressure comes, but I just think they're too disciplined, Brian. I really do. I think the coaching staff, all of them, have done such a great job of making this young, talented team a very disciplined, hard-nosed football team. I think they deserve the props for that. And I don't think there's any reason with a week's worth of prep that Mike Vrabel and company can't go up there to Denver, get the practice in, adjust to the altitude, focus on the things they need to be focused on, game plan, and go out there and win the game, even if it is at Mile High. Granted, obviously, I would much prefer the AFC Championship game to be at Gillette Stadium. We all want the Patriots to lock up the number one in the conference and get that bye, get everyone healthy, come back and dominate. But if that doesn't happen, I still believe that there's a path for the Patriots, and I'm not shaking, and I'm not as nervous as I would be against a Baltimore or a Buffalo.
I will say this. You do mention about Mike Vrabel going into that kind of setting. I think we do still need to acknowledge the guy on the other sideline, with that being Sean Payton. He's a very experienced coach, Super Bowl winner in himself. So, I think that, you do have to prepare for him. And like you said, I could see, yeah, Bo Nix could definitely get skittish in that game. And frankly, if you were to put a gun to my head and say, who do I trust more? It's absolutely Drake Maye in that situation.
100%.
There's no question there. It's just that thing. It's just playing in Denver that they've never actually been able to win there. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Peyton Manning or Jake Plummer or Brock Osweiler is the quarterback. Like,
Brock the Casbah.
Yeah. The only time you've been able to pull out a win there was when you were trying to tank and get Jaden Daniels, and Chad Ryland actually makes the field goal that he was supposed to miss. And, luckily the fates ended up turning out that you got Drake Maye out of that. But, that's the only time I can remember them actually going into Denver and winning a game out there. Like, it's a very tough place to win, man. And, if they were to go out there, I'd definitely be nervous. And, just to kind of remember back, I remember back in like 2013, 2015, listening to sports talk radio, and, all these Patriots fans are calling in and saying like, oh, how much you think we're going to win by? Like, how bad is Denver going to get beat up in this game? Oh, how many picks is Peyton Manning going to throw because he has no arm? And I just remember sitting in the car and I was like, that place, man, like, it's a tough place to play. So, I mean, listen, who knows? I mean, if it comes down to it, maybe Drake Maye does surprise me in that and goes out and balls out and, just proves even more why he should be the MVP of the league. But, that remains to be seen. But, as we get into the overall playoff picture with him, I think the question is now just going to be, because I think he's passed the test of the regular season. That's done. Like, whether you want him to be the MVP, whether he should be the best quarterback, all this stuff in the league, like those conversations, they can be had, and frankly, they're being had. And in my opinion, the MVP conversation is all but done. However, the next thing he's going to have to, the next obstacle he's going to have to meet, it isn't going to be next week. It's going to be in either 2 or 3 weeks. And it's going to be, what does Drake Maye look like in a playoff game? Is he going to be able to lock in and, perform and have a performance maybe like this and, have his best? Or is he going to maybe be more like a Justin Herbert in a playoff setting where, guys melt down? Because, listen, Justin Herbert, we watched him yesterday, and, he's an excellent quarterback. He can make some plays there, and he's a great player. Even maybe could have MVP potential if he plays up to it. But come playoff time, he's wilted on multiple occasions. They've let leads completely wither away and lose games that they otherwise shouldn't have. I don't know yet if that's going to be part of Drake Maye's game. I think that in these games we've seen that he's been able to look good and he isn't making mistakes, but how does he look when the lights are at their brightest?
I just don't see him crumbling, Bryant. Like, when you look at the litmus tests that the Patriots have had this year, right? They've had 2 really big litmus tests this year where the lights were as bright as they possibly can be with the schedule. And we go back to people saying schedule merchants, you got to play the game in front of you, right? Yep. You don't make your own schedule. This isn't college, right? You get the schedule that's handed to you from the commissioner and you got to play it. And you think about them going into Orchard Park this year and beating the Buffalo Bills. You think about them going against the then red hot, but now wheels are falling off the bus, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and beating them at their place. Drake Maye was unfazed in both those games, Brown. Yeah. And those are the 2 biggest. I remember the Orchard Park game, thinking people saying playoff-like atmosphere. Talk about a tough place to win. Yeah. Prime time, big games. Orchard Park is a tough place to win too. And Drake Maye just constantly seems like he's unfazed, like he's prepared, and that none of this bothers him, Brian. And I think we're going to see, especially if we have to host LA or we have to host Houston or we have to host the Jaguars or the Steelers in the wild card or divisional game, I think that we're going to see that Drake Maye is just as calm and composed as he has been the entire season, because that's just who he is. He's a calm, composed quarterback who's ready, prepared, has all of the physical tools, and can be the person for the New England Patriots to potentially bring them to the promised land.
Yeah. And something I'll say with that is, I think one of the things that, while you wish they would have won this game and it would have, maybe solidified their chances with the number 1 seed and things like that, I think there's a chance that loss to Buffalo 2 weeks ago, or now 3 weeks ago, has a chance to actually be a great learning tool for them. And it could show them that, the teams are going to be able to make halftime adjustments on you, and that you're going to need to be able to react to those kind of things and be ready for it. Because otherwise, teams might be able to steal a game on you. You're up 21 points on Buffalo. It looks like we were about to trounce them, and it was going to be almost a coronation of sorts. And it was going to be like, wow, the Patriots are back on top as the league's best team. Here we go. But you let Josh Allen and the Bills back into that one, and it was like, okay, maybe it's still like a little brother thing. You don't maybe know yet. So I think that, the fact that they got that out of the way and that didn't happen in a playoff game is huge for this team. Because I could have easily seen maybe like the Chargers a couple of years ago where, you get up big in a playoff game and you take your foot off the gas and the other team is able to inch back in. You get the double score before halftime and things start to maybe not fall your way. And that was a big learning lesson for this team. And the thing I'll say about this team is that they've been able to learn and adapt quickly, which is great. And it's not like a 2 to 3 week learning process. It seems almost like the next week, the next drive even, that they've made the adjustment, they've made the switch, and they're ready to go. So I hope that's something that they can carry into the playoffs as well. But, Tyler, just, gut feeling right now with this Patriots team. I know the NFC is elite in itself, but with the AFC playoff picture, things like that, just give me your gut reaction right now heading into week 18 and thoughts on the playoffs.
I think the floor for the Patriots right now that we've clinched the playoffs, is a first-round exit. That's the minimum we could do. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think that's the minimum we could do. I think the ceiling for this New England Patriots team is a Super Bowl victory. I really do. You see the Rams, I have Devonta Adams on my fantasy team. He's been hurt. You've seen Kyron Williams struggling with injuries. You've seen Puka Nacua getting into some hot water recently with some different things that have happened, right? But I don't think that's necessarily going to affect his playing in the future. But that's kind of the team to beat in the NFC right now, right? Is the Rams.
Yeah.
Right? I know Seattle's probably going to get the 1 seed at the time of this recording. I think that'll probably end up being the NFC Championship game, is Seattle versus the Rams. But I think the Rams are ultimately probably going to come out in that one. But I'm going to be honest with you, unless Baltimore or Buffalo goes on a run, I don't see anyone stopping a New England Patriots team with home advantage. I think Gillette is going to get loud. I think Patriots Nation, especially you've seen it with the fan engagement of the Drake May and the Will Get Better Soon Campbell and Barstool Sports posting it, and Drake May kind of being like, it's weird, Brian, because remember when we were the villains of the league?
Yeah.
Remember when everyone hated the Patriots and Tom Brady and, I can't stand him. I hate the Patriots. I hope they suck. I hope they lose. And it almost seems to me like the fans, NFL fans, like the Patriots again. Like, this is a likable team. And I think that Gillette and Foxborough and Patriots Nation, because of that, are fired up. And I think they're ready. I think you see it in the ticket sales. You can't get a ticket at Gillette Stadium under $150, $175. Patriots fans want to go to watch this team. They're filling up Gillette Stadium. Everyone's excited. We're going into playoffs with a lot of momentum behind us. We win out. We beat the Miami Dolphins next week. The Broncos lose next week. We could be the 1 seed, and we could go into this playoff picture looking very good. And if we're the 2 seed, okay, we'll take the Chargers with a wilting Justin Herbert at home. We'll take the Texans at home. We'll even take the Jags or the Steelers at home. Those are very winnable games. Talk about hard places to play. It's Foxborough come playoffs. People are excited. People are rowdy. People are chanting, yelling, and screaming. And that atmosphere is just a different place to play in for these other teams. And I really see the Patriots making a run here. And as I said, we're playing with house money, so why not give it everything you have? Why not go all out and do what this team is maximally capable of doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, obviously the Patriots the past couple of years had some issues playing at home, but they've seemed to figure that out this season especially. And I think that, you mentioned the Patriots being likable and all this stuff, and it's been almost like enough time has passed since the end of the, dynasty and everything like that. And it really does feel like a fresh take on it. It's not like Belichick got a new quarterback and things are still going and it's kind of like that. There was in my opinion, a clean break. You saw things kind of go downhill in the end with Belichick and then the 1 year with Mayo. And it really does feel like a new identity with this team. And it's, from the culture, from the team doing the individual walkouts, it really does feel like they're trying to establish themselves as a new team. The only thing I would say maybe as a concern going into the playoffs would be this. And, people have talked about the strength of schedule throughout the season. And, if you want to throw it out there, that's fine. But I will say this. You played the Bills and you played the Ravens the past couple weeks going into this Jets game. Those were good ones. And frankly, going into that, I was saying that I wanted us to split it. And I thought that would be the best case scenario. And I'm actually kind of happy with the way they did split it by beating the Ravens and ending that on a good note. But I will say that, when you're facing maybe the Jets and the Dolphins and Quinn and Ewers, and listen, I know that the Dolphins always can cause some havoc in these late regular season games for the Patriots, so I'm not going to take them necessarily lightly. You have to still finish the job on this Sunday. But, if they do, those are on paper two lesser opponents. And if you maybe go into wild card weekend, you don't have that, extra week to prepare for an opponent. Does a team like the Chargers maybe creep up on you? Does another team like that maybe cause some problems because you've been playing, lesser competition? And could a team like that maybe really, get on you early? That's the only thing I would have, maybe some concerns of. It's not a total concern for mine. I really think in general I would have confidence in the Patriots going into it, but it's something I would keep an eye on as we, go down the stretch of the regular season and go into the playoffs. But Tyler, that's kind of the thoughts that I had with the Patriots, the AFC playoff picture, and that kind of stuff. Anything you wanted to add before we go on to the next segment?
I don't think the New England Patriots are taking anyone lightly, Brian. I think the reason we kept Drake Maye out there, the reason that we went down towards halftime and wanted to score is because we saw what happened during the Buffalo game, to your point, when we thought that this was done and good, when this was wraps and we were up 21-0. We're not taking that chance ever again. Yeah. And you talk about the learning curve, I think that has been very well communicated to the players from the Mike Vrabel-led leadership there. And I really think we're going to go into Miami. It'll be more of the same of what we saw this week. We're not taking anyone lightly. We're not taking our foot off the gas. We want to bury every single team that we face. And we're not going to let something like what happened at Gillette against the Bills happen ever again.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right with that. So we'll have to see how the AFC playoff picture and the New England Patriots pay off. They'll face the Miami Dolphins next weekend at Gillette Stadium. So looking forward to that one. But Tyler, moving on, we have some other exciting news. I know that, both you and I, myself, an alum of Bryant University. I know yourself are currently a senior at Bryant. We got Bryant men's basketball, on the horizon right now. They just wrapped up conference play on Sunday afternoon with a win over Division III Worcester State, beating them 95-59. They end non-conference play 4-10 overall and 2-10 against Division I opponents. Aaron Davis and Keegan Harvey had career highs in that one. Harvey had 21 points, Davis with 20. I know obviously, Tyler, it's against a Division III school. There's maybe not a ton to take away, from the game itself, but we'll talk about the overall season with the team, but just give me your overall quick thoughts on today's game.
I think today's game was exactly what we needed after High Point, right? We went into High Point, went down there in North Carolina, and honestly, we just got beat up bad, Brian. We got beat up bad, and I don't think a lot of the players or the fans' confidence was really high after that. A lot of people, myself, have watched almost every minute of Bryant basketball this year. It was probably the worst game that we've played, right? Yeah. And I think we came out here, and this is exactly the confidence booster that we needed heading into conference play. We played Maine on Saturday, right? And we need a win there. I mean, we're going into a big, very important conference play schedule now. We need our confidence to be high, and I think that's exactly what Worcester State did for us today.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this with the Worcester State, like you said, it is a confidence boost. It has the team maybe flying high as you go into that. I similarly with the Patriots in our last segment, I would just be wary where you're playing maybe a lesser opponent. Does that hurt you when you go into when you go back to playing Division I, you're playing in these conference games? It was a similar kind of sentiment I had with the women's schedule as well. They ended their season playing against Georgian Court and Franklin Pierce before they go and play New Hampshire on New Year's Day. So it's something I kind of am a little bit weary of there. And like you said, they had a really tough outing against High Point. That was a brutal game for them. I will say it reminded me a lot of the Grand Canyon game that we saw from a year ago, where you went into Grand Canyon and you were missing Raf Pinzone because he was out with that lower body injury at the time, and that team which is a good one, was a tournament team last year. They ran roughshod over you, and it was really an ugly one out there. And I was at that game, and I got a chance to see how that thing went down. And I remember I had people coming up to me and saying, like, we haven't gotten blown out like this in, like 3 or so years. Like, this just doesn't happen in a Bryant game. Like, regardless of the opponent, it always stays somewhat close. And, I think that there's a lot that you can take away from that one. You can even make, correlations back to 2022 when, that 2022 team lost to Houston 111-44 and got absolutely blown out in that one. So, something I said in Twitter Spaces with Matt Carvalho a little while ago was that, coaches, when they make these schedules, they try to do a third of the schedule against opponents that they view are at their level. They do another third against opponents that they view they can beat. And then they do another third against opponents that they view are, above their caliber, above their level. And that's across all sports, whether it's basketball, volleyball, whatever the case. I know that I've talked to coaches and I know that's what they do. I think the problem you saw with Bryant is that they had those games against the high points, against the UConns, against the Georgia Techs and the Virginia Techs of the world. And those games went probably how you figured they would have. The problem was when you looked at the games, maybe like the Harvards, the Ionas, the Brown, which, even though that was a blowout game, Jamie and Christian said that was one of his worst coach games of his career, which, I think means that he probably saw that one being, a more competitive game than it otherwise should have been. Those games are ones that I think you have to put more stock into. But yeah, when you look ahead to conference play, it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes out. But, Tyler, just give me your overall thoughts. We talked a little bit about the Worcester State game. What are your thoughts just in general on, the non-conference slate in general?
So for the non-conference slate and for where we've been for the seasons, I want to take it in two parts, right? I agree with the approach. I disagree with the execution. And I want to break that down a little bit for you, Brian, right?
Yeah.
I agree with the approach, right? First off, I agree with the guys that were brought into this Bryant team, right? When we look at our freshmen that are coming in, you have Ashley Sims, who frankly shocked me and has been consistently putting up double-digit games for this team. He's in there down in the post. He's grabbing rebounds. He's making layups. He's dunking the ball, and he's an amazing starting piece for this team. You talk about Tim Radowski, that we like to call in the Bryant fan community the Soviet sniper, right?
Yeah.
Has been absolutely amazing. Winning Rookie of the Year. You get Ty Tabales, who chose us over schools like URI, right? You even look at guys who haven't got that much playing time this year, like Gio Sanford, like Joe Green, like Ethan Bourgain, right? Like Lenny Weber. These are all amazing acquisitions. And that's the first part of like the approach, right? Which is go out and get your guys that you want to get. Specifically, Brian, I agree with this approach, and I think it's excellent because by the time Jamian signed as the Bryant head coach, half of the transfer portal had already committed.
Yeah.
There was only half the transfer portal left available. And if I'm not mistaken, National Signing Day had almost happened, if not had already happened. So it's amazing that Jamian and company were able to go out and get such a talent. Also, forgot, Quincy Allen has been an amazing starting piece for us too. Need to give him his flowers. It's amazing that Bryant has gone out and gotten these guys on this team, which is great. Now we go to the second part of the approach, the schedule. I 100% agree with the way they've approached the schedule this year. I think it's a great idea. You have a group of young guys, a group of experienced guys, Quincy Allen from Colorado, JMU, Chicago State. You need them to gel together. Why not put him up against Georgia Tech? Why not put him up against Virginia Tech, UConn, Marist even, High Point, Iona, these really good schools and get them to gel and bond as a team? I think that's been a great approach, and I think it's worked. Now where I get to execution, Brian, two things on execution that I think have gone incredibly wrong for this Bryant team. The first one is adaptability. I don't think we've been able to make changes in game as well, if not good. I think that we've had consistently in just Division One college basketball in general, guys have off games. That's what happens. But we haven't been able to show an ability to make the changes when guys have bad games. Last year, if Raf wasn't shooting the ball well, that's great. Let's get it to Earl inside, right? We're able to make those changes at halftime, in the huddle, in those games. I haven't seen Coach Christensen be able to do that thus far, right? You talk about the Brown game. You talk about the Harvard game. That was a big one. You talk about all these games. Marist, that was a big thing. I haven't seen many in the game changes from them. And the second one, when it comes to execution, is movement, Bryant. We do it well against the Division III schools. We did it well against Worcester State. We did it well against Mercy. Is we're constantly moving, flying up and down the court. But the tallest kid on Worcester State is 6'4",
Yeah.
right? The tallest kid on Mercy was like 6'3", right? Of course, Quincy Allen at all of 6'9" is able to fly down the court on them. But what I'm most worried about is when you watch UConn, when you watch Duke, when you watch North Carolina, when you watch Tom Izzo and Michigan State, is they're constantly moving when they're on offense. As soon as their point guard comes down the floor, they're constantly moving. The offense is set up. With the Jamie Christensen offense, I see everyone on the wing except for Ashley Sims, who's down there in the paint where he should be because he's dominated, but no one is constantly moving. And I think that takes away from a lot of the strengths that this really talented athletic roster has.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I think that you mentioned Ashley Sims. He reminds me of almost like a beefier like Danny Rivera. That's like kind of maybe the vibe I get from him. It's not exact, but kind of making those plays like crashing along the baseline, making those plays to the basket. It kind of gives me those vibes. It's not exact, but that's kind of it's a similar vibe to that. He's almost like a roided up Danny Rivera, I would say. And then like you said with Tim Radofsky, he's been excellent from beyond the arc, and it's weird when he's beyond the arc or down low, maybe making like turnaround fades and stuff like that. He's great. The problem sometimes with him is maybe getting to the down low. If he's trying to crash down low, I don't know. It doesn't always look the best. Maybe when he's moving down low, like he's a good player. I think that he has a lot of potential, and he's 21 years old and only a freshman. So I think that there's a lot of chances with him. But like you said, I think there's some good players on this roster. Quincy Allen being another one of that. He's on, I think, what is this, his fourth team or so now? Like he's been able to, show that he can be, a very quality piece. And I think that, although he didn't maybe have as great a game today as I would have said, in terms of the scoring category, he had 6 rebounds and 4 blocks in this one. And I think I could see him being more of like a Swiss Army, role kind of, player instead of like just a volume scorer. He might be doing a lot more of the grunt work kind of stuff where he's getting those boards. He's getting, some of those blocks and making a lot more defensive plays than we otherwise would have given him credit for. And I'm glad that you mentioned some of these other freshmen that are making plays because it's really it is impressive to see that Bryant was able to assemble this kind of a roster at this point because not only did Coach Christian have maybe not a full grab of the transfer portal, he was doing it while across the ocean in Italy while coaching another team to a professional championship over there. So he was balancing that and having their assistants kind of run the show over here, and then you had other guys like Ty Tabala, who's the starting point guard, didn't join the team until July 23rd. Because he was supposed to go to do a prep year. He was supposed to not merely come out until next year. And, at that prep year, Coach Christian said on the Field of 68 America East preseason show that, this year was supposed to be Ty's year of learning the point guard spot. He is naturally a 2 guard, and this year was going to be him learning how to play the point guard spot. Today he goes out, he has 11 assists in this one, and kind of looks like he's maybe able to feel a little bit more comfortable with that, which is great. I think the issue maybe with this team, and I think that, like you said, there are some good quality teams in here that they faced off against. Maybe the only issue I would say is this: do they know how to win these close games? Because you had the good wins over Dartmouth, you had and then over Stonehill, and then the Division III games are going to go the way that you expect them to. But when it's a single digit, 5-point game with 3 minutes left in the second half, do they have the ability to, put together, what it takes to win that game or to pull away, or if it's, to come away with a victory there. I don't know that because they haven't really been put in that situation many times. They had it against Harvard. They lost 56-53. They had it similarly in situations against Iona. They lost 69-63. So do they have what it takes to win those games? I don't really feel either way because just, again, we haven't seen it. But, I think that, like you said, this is going to be an interesting team. And the weird thing about them is that I would have thought that maybe through 14 games or so, I would know kind of the identity and what this team was going to look like. I still really have no idea, Tyler. I really don't. And it's because they've had like 8 different guys score in double figures, which is great. But the problem like that, which you kind of alluded to it earlier, is that you really don't know who the key guys are going to be each night. Yes, it's good that you can adapt and you can throw it off different people, but you at least knew all right, Earl is going to have this role in the offense. Raph is going to be this 3-point specialist that's going to do this type of thing. Connor Withers is going to do this. I really don't know who are going to be some key competitor, who are going to be the key pieces for Bryant as we go into this one. I know, like we said, Keegan Harvey and Aaron Davis had 20-point games. I don't know if that's really going to be what they do come conference play. I really don't.
Well, so I take it this way, Brian. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who said something pretty interesting, right? Yeah. He said, this season, this non-conference play under this Jamian Christensen Bryant has kind of felt, to me at least, he said, as a big tryout, right? We saw against High Point, and granted we were getting smacked, we saw Langston Bailey come in the first half and play point guard. We saw Joe Green come in and play point guard. We saw Ja'Kai Robinson come in and play point guard. We saw guys coming in and out off the bench, and that's kind of been, you said eight people in double figures this season. That makes sense. Yeah. It seems to be like this season has been one big tryout to see when conference play comes and when the chips are on the table and when it really matters, who's going to show up for us. And honestly, I think, Brian, that question's been answered with one caveat, and I'll explain.
Sure.
So let's talk about what's worked. First off, let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. Aaron Davis has played, frankly, amazing. And I've been an Aaron Davis fan for a while, since he was on the team with Doug Enter, right? I think Aaron Davis is shooting the highest three-point percentage on the entire team. The past couple games since the Iona game really has been shooting lights out for us, and we've seen what he's been able to do when Keegan or Tim come set him the screen in the corner, or when he has an open look in the corner. He's been getting better at attacking the rim. And honestly, my biggest thing for him, Brian, what I think puts him head and shoulders above everyone else and made him earn his spot in the starting lineup, is the kid just hustles.
Yeah.
He busts his butt. We're down 30 to Grand Canyon. I'm watching this game with my grandfather. We see Aaron Davis flying down the court, down 30, trying to play defense, trying to get steals. They say you can't teach heart. I think Aaron Davis has won the tryout and earned a spot at that 3, if not 2 guard position to be a legitimate asset and a starter for this team. Next guy up, I think Tim Bernowski, the Soviet Sniper, has passed the tryout. He won Rookie of the Week, consistently shooting well from 3. You talked about when he's inside, consistently doing well. He can guard 1 through 5. He's able to make the plays. He makes it look easy. He has that really cool catapult jump shot that just somehow finds its way into the basket all the time. He makes like Tim Duncan-ish moves in the paint where he turns around and hits the midi 3. He's passed the tryout. Ashley Sims, we already talked about him. He's passed the tryout. He's been quite the force for us in the paint. You talked about Danny Rivera going in the paint. He's passed the tryout. Quincy Allen, probably the most athletic player we've had since Barry Evans. He's passed the tryout. The dunks, the threes, the mid-range shots, he's all been able to do it. My biggest question, Brian, is who's going to fill that 5 spot? Keegan's been filling the 5 spot for the entire season so far. We had Daniel Koué earlier in the season, though he is been out because of an undisclosed medical injury. Jamian talked about he might suit up for High Point. He didn't. He was fully dressed for this game, didn't play because Keegan was dominating. But honestly, Brian, I haven't seen a whole lot from Keegan Harvey besides this game against Worcester State that makes me go out there and makes me say, wow, he can beat up on someone like Gus Yeldon for UVM. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it.
I'm glad you mentioned Yalden there. Yeah.
He's averaging about 3 rebounds and 3 points a game prior to this game. He hasn't shown much dominance in that paint that you want from a center. I understand at GW he was more of a 3-and-D kind of guy, but he hasn't really shown that much this game either. I think this week, maybe, and he talked about it a little bit in his post-game presser, that he's heard the noise the coaching staff has gotten on him, and this is a confidence booster for him going into conference play. I would love to see that. I really would. I would love to see him go out and dominate, but we need him. We need Keegan Harvey or someone at that 5 spot so badly for this team to be complete and make a run at the championship.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it doesn't need to necessarily be like an old school like big down low, because I think that last year you had Keyshawn Mitchell, who, frankly, I love Keyshawn, he's great, but I don't think that he was necessarily like, like he's not Shaq down there, like he's not doing that kind of thing, but he was at least a presence that you kind of felt down low. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be determined with Keegan. And I think that, while Bryant is on paper, like one of the bigger teams in the country, they were kind of getting pushed around down low in some of these games, and they were getting out rebounded by a team like Marist. And, there was kind of a discrepancy there. So I do look at that, and I would take that into account. So, I mean, I think that, it's a good sign for Keegan. We don't really know exactly how it's going to look come conference play, but, if Akue gets back in there, if he starts to do his thing, I think that that could be interesting. And then, some of those other guys trying to fill out that role too. And, I don't think that they're necessarily going to, I don't think that they would have like Tim down there, but they could make some plays and make some things happen with them too. I think that's going to be more of a rotational thing. But like you said, with Gus Yeldon out of UVM, he's been a force this year. Probably is going to win Conference Player of the Year by all accounts. He's just been that dominant. If I had to make my prediction right now, it would be him for Player of the Year, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, just in general, I think that's going to be where it's kind of won and lost for Bryant this year. But as we go into conference play, I do have to say that the America East as a whole kind of looks like it's down this year. It really does. It really does, because you look at UMaine, who was in the championship game with Bryant last year, 1-13 to start conference play. UAlbany, who played us incredibly competitive in a semifinal game last year when we didn't have Raf Pinzone, they're also 4-10 right now. UVM, who is usually the top of the league, they're 8-6. Okay, they're doing their thing, and then you have UMBC, who is in that 2 spot at 6-6, and Jim Ferry's always able to put together a great roster, and I would expect nothing less of them. I know that we beat them all 3 times we saw them this year. Those 2 regular season games were all incredibly close. The only reason that quarterfinal game was because one of their players was out with a neck injury at the time, so he didn't play. So he didn't play in that game. So I would definitely think that UMBC is going to be a team that you can't take lightly this year. No. As we go throughout the stretch, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. I think Maine is going to be a huge game because although they're having a down year so far from what we can see, the Pit is always it's a tough place to play. That place is just it's like old school, like Hoosiers vibes. Like you're going in there like. Man, I went up there last year. It feels like you're at a hockey game. It's an unbelievable vibe. Like it's old wooden chairs. It's an old barn up there. And like I remember being up there and like coaches at the practice, they're banging on the glass boards trying to pretend to be like the fans, like intimidating the players. Like it's a tough place to play. So if Bryant was even to go up there, even if UMaine isn't having as good a year as people are saying, if they were to come out with a win there, it would be incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, I don't know, because their one win was to BU, but I will say 1-13 is not very good.
No, of course not.
I think we've had the toughest non-conference schedule in the American East. Obviously, Vermont is going to do their thing. They're kind of like top dog. Everyone always has Vermont favored to win. And I get it. Even last year, they were favored to win when we had such a better roster than them. Them and UMBC are going to be the teams to beat, but I'm not worried about Albany. I'm not really worried about Maine, even though we have to go into their barn, to be honest with you. They're 1-13. We have such a more talented roster than them. It just goes back to what I talked about. We need to be adaptable. and we need to constantly be moving. If we have those two things, Brian, I have no doubt in my mind that we win that game. Even though it's at that barn and you have, when you watch the ESPN broadcast, the football players yelling down at you, yelling and screaming, taking their shirts off last year. I remember it. But I really think that we're better than them. And if we lose that game on January 3rd, it's because we weren't adaptable and we weren't moving and we were stagnant and we just went in with a game plan and lived and died by that game plan and didn't move at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. That is like that's the one place in the America East where you have like the NCAA football crowd pulse like thing. Like
yeah.
That's like one of the few places where you get that thing going. And like you said, I outside of like NJIT and UNH, most of these places, it's just the environment. It's really tough to win in those places. Like UMass Lowell has that thing. Vermont has that thing. Like Vermont gets all the old people out there at the game, so they have that whole crowd. Which credit to them, they pack that place out. So credit to them with that. Binghamton, I'd feel confident with. I was doing kind of a win-loss thing going into the year. I frankly see that, I could see this team maybe going like 8-8 in conference and, being a 4 seed and hosting a playoff game. I know that they were originally predicted to be a 6 seed, but in my opinion, if they went 8-8, which is what UAlbany was last year, and they were a 4 seed, hosted Binghamton in a playoff, if you do that, I would consider this season, with all things considered, a success based on, how this went. Like, obviously you want to go back and you want to compete for, a conference title, but if you at least have the chance to be on your home floor for the start of the America East playoffs, I think that you're in good shape.
Brian, I don't know about that. From a fan's perspective, the Bryant fan base really, really cares about the basketball team.
Oh, I'm not sure.
We have about one good sport per season at Bryant. You got soccer, right? Everyone's big. Men and women's soccer are great, right? Everyone loves going to the soccer games. You have lacrosse in the spring. Men and women's lacrosse in the spring are great. And this year, we have men and women's basketball that are great. And we care so much about the basketball team. And specifically, we want to win. So I think from the fans' perspective, nothing short of a conference championship appearance is a win for this talented roster.
Oh, of course, Tyler. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not saying that you're settling for that. I'm not saying that you're just settling to make it there and do all that sort of stuff. Of course, you want to win a conference championship. But when you look at the reality of maybe where this team is coming from, of, you have a new first-year head coach, you have a bunch of freshmen on this team, could they go out and surprise everyone? Yes, I want them to do that. That's my goal. I'd love it if Bryant goes out this year and goes gangbusters in conference play and establish themselves, and, they become like almost a spot in the America East where it's like, coaches can come through and they can build up a program here and be successful. I'd love that to be, the identity of Bryant. But I also have to just like operate within the reality that, Vermont is always going to be, a top tier team. UMBC is a great program. And I think that, Bryant has, made it into the America East and they've adapted well. But outside of, the last year's team, which went, 14-2 in conference play and was, breaking records and, only lost, 2 games in conference play just in general, like after 2020, in 2025, like, those teams set records for a reason. It's because it's very hard to do. Do I expect this team to only lose two games in conference play this year? No, I just wouldn't expect it because it's only been done once prior. Like Bryant started 8-0 against league opponents last year. That's not something that happens normally. Like when they beat Vermont and they beat UMass Lowell, that was kind of an eye-opening moment of like, oh, it's interesting. Like this could be a very different kind of team this year. The kind of previous kind of look at Bryant was that, in 2023 and 2024, they were teams that maybe didn't live up to the expectations. In 23, you had, Charles Pride left over from that NEC team, and they had a chance to be a 3 seed going into the conference tournament. They lost a heartbreaker up at Maine, ended up as a 6 seed, and guys got hurt and they lost in the opening round. You had the team the next year. Earl Timberlake breaks his hand against NJIT in a meaningless game, essentially, and you end up losing to UMass Lowell in that one. So I will say, like, Bryant obviously was able to get over the hump this year and get back to that prominence, but it's not something that's always expected year in and year out.
Yes, Brian, I understand that, but I do want to make this kind of statement because I feel like it applies to both the Patriots and the Bryant basketball team, right? There's been so much recency bias with both of these teams, right? Now that the New England Patriots have a good quarterback again, everyone is comparing Drake Maye to Tom Brady, right? And as Drake Maye said, he's not Tom Brady, he's Drake Maye. Now that we're into another advent of the basketball season with league play, everyone wants to compare this Bryant team to last year's Bryant team, to the 2023 Bryant team, to the 2022 Bryant team.
Sure.
I get it, right? But here's my thing. You can't compare them.
No,
in
you
both
can't.
aspects.
No.
You had the Jared Grasso kind of coaching tree with Martelli taking over. You still had Chris Cole, who's a phenomenal coach. You still had all the assistants left on the roster. You still had that DC scouting pool that we got Earl Timberlake, Charles Pride, all these Sharif Cross Bullock, these great players from. You no longer have that, Brian.
Yeah.
You no longer have that system, that old guard for either team. Belichick is gone. Grasso and PMJ are gone. So this is a new team, and we need to look at it from that new perspective. I don't think that we're going to be going out breaking records going 14-0, but I do think that this team has the talent, the veteran experience, and guys like Aaron Davis, Quincy Allen, and Ja'Kai Robinson, and a coach who's proved it in the EuroLeague and is a good coach if he works on adaptability and movement to make a run and win the conference championship. And I think as Bryant fans, we shouldn't let the recency of last year's conference championship go and make us be like, we need to win another one. But I think that always needs to be the goal, and always needs to be, we don't win the season unless we win the conference championship. A lot of the guys that I've talked to on this team in class, walk into class, I was there this summer. I lived at Bryant this summer, so I got to meet all those guys. There was only one cafeteria open, so we were all hanging out together. They want to win the conference championship.
Oh, of course.
They want to go to March, and they're constantly working towards that. And frankly, we have the skill to do it. So I think we will and can put up a really good fight this year against a UMBC and a UVM. And I think we're about probably, I'd say, the third best team in terms of skill and talent in the conference right now. Albany is a close fourth, but I think that's where we are right there. And I think that Bryant has a lot to look forward to come conference play.
No, and I'll give you that. I would just say this, though, with it being a new guard, I think that you have to sometimes look at this team. And I talked to Aaron Davis. I have had him on my show on the Bryant show, and I've talked with him. And, he said the same thing that you're echoing, is that, these guys, as soon as they got on campus, they were saying, we're going back to March Madness. We're going back. And that's the perfect mentality to have. That's exactly how I want you thinking going into the season. I don't want you thinking anything but that. However, I will say this, that, when it comes to this year, there are going to be new firsts for this team. We had the first win against Vermont last year. We had the first win against UMass Lowell last year. We had the first win going at UMass Lowell and getting those wins. You have to kind of almost reestablish those firsts again under the Jamie and Christian era, because you had them, like you said, from the Grasso and the PMJ era doing that kind of thing. And I consider that stretch really is kind of one core coaching staff.
Yeah.
I know obviously the head staff switches, but a lot of things remained in place from that time. But, there were a lot of firsts that had to happen there. And you can even trace that back to 2022 when, Bryant had to get over the hump of beating Mount St. Mary's, who they lost to in the conference championship a year prior. They had to get that monkey off their back and win that one. I think that you have to reestablish that this year. You can't just go in knowing, well, we've already this team's already beaten Vermont before. They know they can do it. No, you kind of have to treat it as you haven't done it before. You have to, reestablish that. You have to, try it for that again. And I know that's a kind of a lot I know that's kind of a giant word salad, but that's kind of my thoughts on, how that kind of has to be treated. You can't just go in, expecting, saying, well, we've done it before, we'll just do it again. No, it is new players. It's a new vibe with this team. And it's going to be, how do they do it? They're not going to be able to do it the same way they did it last year.
Well, I think the answer is depth, Brian.
Yeah.
I think the biggest positive for this Bryant team that I see is that we have guys on our bench that would start on every single other American East team besides maybe UMBC and UVM, right? You talk about guys like Ethan Bourgain, right? He's not starting right now. He's a rotational guy. But Ethan Bourgain would be a legitimate center on UMass Lowell. He would be their starting center. Ethan Bourgain would be the starting center on almost every team. NJIT, he'd be the starting center. Ethan Bourgain, Lenny Weber, same deal. Guys like Geo Sanford would probably be a starting, if not a six-man, for a lot of these teams. I just think we're so deep, right?
Yeah.
And my thing is, when I look at these games and I look at the players' abilities, right, is I keep thinking to myself, it's like, we got to put this together, right? Like, for conference play, we got to put this together because there's just so much talent on this team that, frankly, we haven't seen like raw talent like this. A lot of young guys, everyone likes to call us a young team. These ESPN announcers, I swear, everyone says it's a young team. But like you were talking about, like, the Sylvia Sniper, Tim, is 21 years old, and he like got flicked up and coached by LeBron, right? You look at Ashley Sims, played in a very competitive OTE league. Ethan Bourgain is what, 21, 22 years old?
Yeah.
Same thing with Daniel Akue. Geo Sanford's a little old for his age. So is Joe Green. Like, yes, Lenny Weber's like 22, 23. I get that these guys like don't have like the experience and like number of minutes played in college basketball, but Aaron Davis knows what it's like to be a champion. Ja'Kai Robinson knows what it's like to be a champion. And these guys have been around the game of basketball long enough. It's not like a lot of them are 18-year-old kids just coming in fresh out of high school in the middle of nowhere and not being able to play and adapt to college play. Like, these dudes, including Coach Christensen, have faced very high levels of basketball competition for the majority of their life. And that's why I think, like, when we come out in conference play, we're going to come out hard and we're going to, frankly, surprise a lot of people, maybe even ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think they have a chance to surprise themselves with how this goes. And, when we talk about this kind of a schedule and how this how this non-conference slate went, I think that there is a chance that, when we've seen Bryant teams in the past have these like great, stretches of non-conference play. We saw it in, I think it was 24 when you beat number 10 FAU and you were getting all this attention from Sports Center and March Madness, March Madness's Instagram and all this kind of stuff. And then you saw it in 2023 when, you went to Syracuse and you beat them on Black Friday and it was a great win for you there. But that ultimately ended up leading to you going into conference play and maybe not performing up to the standard you could have. What this does is at least it if you want to operate maybe on like a positive side, it's that you can maybe go into conference play and, maybe your best basketball is still ahead of you.
100%.
And that's the exciting thing is that you're not peaking too early, because I think that you still have the chance to reach your peak, and you maybe haven't even started going in that direction yet, which is exciting. And like you said, there's a ton of raw talent on this team, and a lot of them are older by age and have a lot more maybe physical maturity than some of these other 18-year-olds and people like that would. And it's kind of interesting. I've been making this analogy with other people, and it's, Bryant's, it's almost kind of being run like juniors in hockey in college, where you have a lot of these 21-year-old freshmen, or it's even like, staying with Bryant sports. It's kind of like men's soccer, where you have a lot of these older players coming in and playing for a guy like Coach Ruben Resendez. It's almost kind of like the program Jamie and Christian's built there in Smithfield. And he's probably taken some influence from the Italian game and bringing that over here. So it's interesting how that's all going. But yeah, like, I think that, this team in general has a lot of promise. I think that they can do some great things when we go into conference play. I think that, it's going to just be a matter of how these pieces all come together. And if it's going to maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, like you said, you have a ton of players that maybe could start for other opponents. Is that going to detract from what this team can be? I'd like to think that they're, they're all for each other. They want to, have the team come together and win. I think that's definitely their mindset and how they operate. It's just going to be a matter of how that comes together on the court. And in terms of the talent, gelling and all that stuff, not trying to make this kind of a comparison, but you look at maybe the Miami Heat in 2011 when, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and that team, all came together. They were able to have some success. They got to an NBA Finals and were able to do, good things that season, but ultimately weren't ready yet. The pieces just weren't able to gel, and a team like Dirk Nowitzki's Mavs were able to beat you, maybe where it wasn't nearly as talented, and you had all the talent on your end. So it's going to be a matter of, can the pieces gel in time to when you get to the conference playoffs, you're ready to go. That's going to be the
Well,
big question there.
Brian, that brings up a really interesting point that I actually wanted to bring up with you.
Yeah.
And kind of this new age of college basketball and what we've seen this year from the talent on our team is I actually don't know how many of these guys are going to stay, to
Yeah.
be honest with you. And
We
that's
don't know.
something that I'm really concerned about based on our talent. We have just so many talented guys on this team. Twardowski, Aaron Davis, Ethan Bourgain, like Ashley Sims, like all these guys. I don't know if a P5 school comes knocking for Tim, he's 21 years old, he has NBA aspirations, the clock is ticking. Does he stay? Does he go? He's probably, in my eyes, a rookie of the year candidate for the American East. So the question is, does he stay? Does he go? And how many of these people actually stay for the Jamion Christensen team? Aaron Davis, he might be a senior or a grad student. He's a senior at this point, I believe, right? Maybe a junior, but he kind of has, he could be a guy that gets reached out by Power Five team and is, do you want the 2 spot? Do you want the 3 spot? I think retention for Jamion Christensen is going to be an interesting thing. And that's why I'm kind of in the camp of the win now, because you never know how in college basketball that's going to pan out. Guys leave. We saw it last year. Personally, this is a hot take. I don't think Keyshawn Mitchell should have left. I get why Barry Evans left. He was the best remaining player on that team. He's super athletic. He's super talented. He wants to be an NBA player. I certainly see the skills for him to do so. But I think that Keyshawn Mitchell should have stayed. He's not getting as much time as I thought he would on this VCU team. And I think that's a mistake, or sometimes a great thing that a lot of these guys do. I'm not too sure that we're going to keep a lot of these amazing young guys. And that's why my kind of like urgent message to the community is we need to show up and we need to win now. Because like the best days, they leave really soon.
No, yeah, I'll say this. I mean, I think Keyshawn's actually kind of a good example of this. Maybe why someone would go, and it's at more the mid-major level. It's a lot more loyalty in the coaches than maybe at some of this higher level. And I think that's at least something I think that could bode well for Coach Christian, is that, unless some of these guys go off and maybe, you look at maybe Michael Green back in like back in 2021 and 2020 and 2021. Who was, NEC player of the year or rookie of the year and was having this terrific season and was a part of a big 3 of him, Peter Kiss, and Charles Pride taking Bryant to the NEC title game against Mount St. Mary's. And then, okay, he gets an offer from Robert Morris, which at the time was a step up. Now at Bryant, it's probably still a step up, but not as drastic.
No way.
Well,
No
it's not.
way.
I'm saying it's not as drastic a step up, but it's comparable now in terms of quality of competition. It at least was at the time.
Mm.
So unless you're getting a noticeable kind of jump, I don't necessarily seeing be like it that I don't see guys necessarily jumping ship just for any other team, if you know what I mean. Unless there's a dynamic or issues with the coaches. If they like the coach, then I think that they have a good chance of retention there, unless the guy pops off.
I understand. I also think like that kind of goes back to the adaptability piece I was talking about. There are a lot of guys I think on this roster that have significant talent that, due to our lack of adaptability, haven't seen the playing time that they deserve, which allows me to kind of think that they would leave either way. Kind of like last year, who was our big man last year? That Favor Air, right?
Yeah,
he's
Favor.
on Coppin State now. He didn't get any playing time. He deserved playing time, never got it, and then left to go to Coppin State. And now I see him battling Keyshawn Mitchell on VCU. That I could see that for a guy like Khalil Williams. Khalil Williams is one of the most talented players on this roster and deserves playing time, but Ty Tabales is kind of taking that up. I think our adaptability piece is, if Ty or someone's having a bad game, he should be thrown in there, right?
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get that look because of our adaptability, I think it's hard for him to stay because he's not being given the opportunity that he deserves. Some of these younger guys like Joe Green and Gio Sanford, who have been featured but haven't gotten necessarily rotational spots, I see them playing it. I see them staying and becoming great players. Geo Sanford specifically, I think as a non-rotational guy right now who's gotten flashes, I think he stays another year or two here and he could turn into an all-conference player, honestly. I think his ability to finish at the rim, his ability to shoot and play defense reminds me of an Aaron Davis, but with a better finishing ability.
Yeah.
I think that, but some of those guys on the bench, like Ethan Bourgain, like Jaheim coming from France, he's a very talented player that hasn't gotten the look that I think he frankly deserves. Langston Bailey is another one that comes to mind. There are a lot of people here that are an immense amount of talent, but because we're not adaptable, and maybe it's because we don't know what those players will give out of us, right? I think we need to be more adaptable and give the right guy at that moment, given people's off games and ups and downs, opportunities to show what they're worth.
Yeah. I'll say this, Tyler. This is a question I have for you. Do you think that with Coach Christian bringing in a lot of these freshmen, and it's kind of a contrast, and I know that was maybe kind of circumstantial to maybe just with where the portal was and how things were going at the time. Maybe if he had come in and maybe if things had progressed sooner and they had come in and they had a full chance at the portal, maybe this would be a different looking team. But in the age of the portal and NIL and all this stuff, do you think that Coach Christian can build a team like this with this many freshmen, or do you think that he's going to have to dip into the portal as he goes throughout his Bryant coaching career?
I think he has a very strong base with the
Sure.
freshmen that he has right now. And frankly, I'm shocked that he has as strong of a base that he does with 50% of the portal being gone by the time that he signed as a head coach.
Sure.
I think everyone that he's brought into this team has been frankly significantly better than recruiting classes we've had in the past. But I also think you kind of the too many cooks in the kitchen thing that you said, like we needed this non-conference play was the time to test a lot of people out. And I think some guys didn't necessarily get the tests that they deserved, and that could lead to them leaving in the future. But I definitely think I thought Phil Martelli could have done it. If he stayed, if we matched his offer, whatever he was getting from VCU, and he stayed, we could have built a legendary program here with Phil Martelli Jr. as our head coach. I truly and honestly believe that. But I think Jamin Christensen can do it as well. The fans are behind him. He's got great talent. And if he wins, people will come. Kind of like what they say in the Field of Dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tyler, I know we're kind of coming towards the end of the program here. Just as we go into Maine and in general, just give me some of your final thoughts.
I think Maine is our first big conference test. I think we need to win it. I think we need to win it by a lot to prove that we are the team that we've been and we've been training to be for a while. I'll say it's going to get the Bryant community fired up. This conference play is where the Bryant community kind of buys in or doesn't buy in. I've had years here at Bryant. You talked about Earl Timberlake breaking his hand. The Bryant fans absolutely not lost hope, but were very depressed for the rest of that season, right? These next couple games, the Bryant community isn't super happy, and I hear them on that. They call it the Bryant burner community online with all the Twitter pages and stuff like that. I have a part of that. I won't reveal which one I am. A lot of people are upset right now about the state of Bryant basketball, and I'm here to tell you to just hold on a little longer.
Yeah.
I think these next couple games, we got Maine. It should be a win. UMass Lowell, it should be a win. We get 2 non-conference wins out of the way. We fire this team up. We fire this fan base up. We have Albany away on the 10th, UNBC back home, and then the biggest game of the year, Brian, the one that's circled in big red pen on my calendar, is that Vermont game at home. I think if we hold out until there as a fan base and we pack the chase, get everyone to show up, we make it loud for Gus Yalden, we start yelling at him, we start, chirping him a little bit within NCAA rules, of course.
Yeah.
it's going to be the biggest game of the year, and that's my litmus test for can this team compete with the top of the conference? And I think we can.
Absolutely. Well, Tyler, really appreciate you taking the time. Really appreciate all the insight on the New England Patriots and the Bryant Bulldogs. It was great to talk about both of those with you. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Go Bulldogs. Go Patriots. Super Bowl. Drake May for MVP. Aaron Davis for Conference Player of the Year, and go Bulldogs.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for taking the time. As we come to a close, we are now officially down to the wire, which means that we're going to wrap up today's show. We just wanted to thank Tyler once again for coming on today. Had a chance to talk some New England Patriots and some Bryant Bulldogs as we close out the new year. Can't wait for 2026. We're going to have some more down to the wire. We're going to have some more Bryant Bulldog Sports Hour as well on 990 WBOB. So stay tuned there. We have some exciting stuff coming up with that program as well. We're going to have more coaches, players, interviews coming up in the new year. So can't wait to see what is next with that. But from down to the wire, I'm Brian Kostiw alongside with Tyler Jarvis. We'll see you next time. Take care and peace out.